This is Janice.
And I'm Sarah N.
And we're your hosts for Explore This, a podcast for the modern day working professional.
Each week, we explore actionable insights on how you can thrive personally and professionally.
Hi everyone, we're so delighted to introduce our special guest on the Explore This podcast today. Sanjay Sarma is the CEO, President and Dean of the Asia School of Business. He was a Professor of Mechanical Engineering and the Vice President of Open Learning at MIT for nearly 10 years, where he oversaw OpenCourseWare and led the creation of MITx, MicroMasters, the MIT Integrated Learning Initiative, and the Jameel World Education Lab. Sanjay, welcome to the Explore This podcast.
Pleasure. Glad to see you both.
Very good to have you, Sanjay, in the flesh. We've always seen you, gallivanting around downstairs for, all the different engagements that you've had. But, we also had a little bit of a challenging time trying to catch you for this conversation. But we're very, very glad to have you here. While preparing for today's conversation, we took the liberty of having some conversations with some of your colleagues. And they shared some interesting fun facts, and I've been also told that you do have a little bit of an obsession with names and history. So we'd love to start off with that and how you use this obsession of yours as a mnemonic technique for you to remember very, very fun and interesting names. So maybe on that note, what does your name mean and what's the little history behind it?
Sanjay. It's just my name is, by the way, probably the most common name in India.
We thought so.
Sanjay Sarma is actually Sharma. It's the same name. So Sanjay Sharma is like Joe Smith. All right. And Sanjay means Jay is victory, like in, Putra Jaya. And Sun is like with or complete, like the English, it's an Indo-European word. So like Sum, S-U-M, same root. So Sanjay means basically a victor.
Wow. Victorious indeed.
It's a very sort of prosperous in a way, right?
Yeah.
Any fun ways you have used this, specific inclination or love of names to remember someone's name in particular?
I just find that if you learn the history of something, for me anyway, but I think for a lot of people, there's so much amazing stuff. It just makes it more memorable, more interesting. Where are you from? Well, my family came from Shenzhen. How many generations ago? 3 generations. What an amazing journey. That means your grandparents decided to move was it political reasons, other reasons, economic. There's something beautiful about it, or the name of a place. Malacca, Penang, right? Where do the names come from? It just makes it more memorable. And when you really get into it, it makes the person more memorable. You personalize the person. You think of them as a human being as opposed to just an individual, right? It's just a passion of mine, but I do feel that even when you teach something abstract like Bitcoin, right? Where does it come from? What's the history? We don't know who Satoshi is. What a beautiful part of that story. But was there other technology? There is. When you learn that, Bitcoin comes to life. So it's all about bringing things to life. And once you bring them to life, they take on a whole new place and things become more exciting. You'll see things in color, 3D, dynamic, as opposed to faded black and white pictures. That's my little trick.
Love that. And on the note of, getting deeper into the context of things, we also want to dive into your origin story. We know that you are the son of a politician and you grew up in an environment that really prioritizes intellectual rigor. So on the dinner tables, you would speak about politics, about physics, even history, which arguably some might say not the breeziest of dinner table conversations.
Or maybe was it for you as a child?
Perhaps, right? But how did your childhood shape you in terms of your core values and led you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, my father is not a politician. He was a civil servant, but he's since then become a very strident pro-democracy and anti-corruption activist. My father-in-law is a politician. Dinner table conversations were very exciting. It depends on what you define as exciting. And at a young age, if someone says talking history is exciting, then that's the most exciting thing you can do. If quantum mechanics is defined as exciting, then that's exciting. And so I grew up with conversations about history, culture, physics, math, but other stuff too. Cricket, sports, tennis. I had a very pleasant childhood. I've had a pleasant life. Let me not kid myself. I've been very lucky. Lots of friends. Lots all over the world. Very warm friendships. Remain in touch all the time, I get, WhatsApps from literally around the world, and I respond to them. And so, I'm very lucky.
Would you say the dinner table conversations now are also still the same, right? Where you debate physics with your parents?
Yeah, my parents are quite old, but yeah, totally. I mean, same thing. And, we disagree on things, politics or something else, origin of humankind, whatever, but it's a lot of fun. My mother just wrote a book on Buddhism,
Whoa.
Wow.
What about conversations with your daughter at the dinner table? Like, can you still keep her entertained with these sort of topics?
Only these kind of topics, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she's pretty, what I'm looking for. She's pretty deep, actually, and strong opinions.
Runs in the family, I'm sure.
Yeah, runs in the families. Our idea of fun is we like to travel, we visit various places. We like go to museums and stuff. Or we'll hang out with friends, a massive group of friends, many of them visited me in Malaysia, from Europe, from America, from Japan, from India. And Tara is part of that ecosystem. And so our conversations are pretty wide-ranging. But she's not a lightweight, shall we say.
Wow, we'd love to, be able to interview her one day to figure out, her side of the story.
Well, let's see if she returns my call first. I have to
get in line.
I have to threaten to cut off her internet before cell phone before she calls me, which she does.
I remember the story you shared about her being more interested to make sure you take a photo with Jacinta Ardern when you met her at the Earthshot event.
Yeah. No, I took a like, for example, if I met Brad Pitt, I don't think she'd care.
Oh, very unconventional daughter.
Yeah.
So we want to also talk about, we talked about those dinner table conversations that involve physics, that involve science, and that ultimately led you to your first job as a junior field engineer, in fact, at Schlumberger Oilfield Services in the UK. And we know there was a pivotal moment, as a young junior field engineer, which actually ignited the desire where you redirected your life path into academia. Could you share with our audience what that moment was about?
Yeah, so, when I got into the Indian Institute of Technology, it's very difficult to get into. I actually met my wife there, by the way. She had a higher rank than me. But once I got into IIT, I sort of lost my way. Because it was a huge barrier I went through, and then I just became this party animal, as I said, I have lots of friends. Used to hang out all the time.
We need to double click on party animal a little bit more.
Let's not go there. And but a lot of the education is very theoretical, and I lost touch with it. And questions are why? Why should you learn this? Why is it applicable? Really started weighing on me. I got out of IIT somehow, and then I went to work at Schlumberger, and I was on a rig, and there, it's all started to make sense. There's a topic in mechanical engineering, fluid mechanics, which, when taught abstractly, excites some, did not excite me. But there, it was all fluid mechanics. So I began to appreciate it. Control theory, I began to appreciate it. Design, I was always into, so that made a lot of sense. And so that same 3D thing, history. Remember what I said about history? All these flat, boring black and white pictures of concepts came to life. They took on personalities, they had backstories, why is the rig built the way it is? Where does oil come from, right? You drill holes, but not everywhere. You got to find them. That's called exploration. It's dangerous. And why does a forklift on an oil rig not have an electric motor? Why? Because you could have a gas escape and you'll ignite it and you'll blow up the rig and yourself. All these things, safety, So I suddenly went from this fairly sheltered life to discovering what real life was. And that was fantastic for me. And then I hurt my knee. And so at that point, I was like, maybe I should take some time off. So I actually took leave to go to CMU for my master's. And I enjoyed it. But now with the experience at the oil rig, your action learning, right?
Yeah.
It's action learning at the MBA.
Absolutely.
During the MBA, this was my action learning. And that was just game-changing.
And that action learning kind of made you fall into academics,
Basically, yeah. Yeah, I also slipped off the rig and hurt my knee, but that's his other fault too. But then I went to CMU. And I just loved it. I also blew my knee out completely at that point. I have screws in my knee. And then I knew there was no way I could go back. So I gave up my Schlumberger, and I became an academic. Then I went to, my wife went to UC Berkeley for a PhD. So I followed her there, and I became an academic.
Well, and therein lies the, very humble and early beginnings of your time in academia. And evidently you had a very fulfilling career as well during your, 27 years at MIT. We'd love to dive into that a little bit more, but also, besides just learning a little bit more about your time in the 27 years, I think fundamentally we wanted to get into the crux of understanding what made you pack your bags from MIT and what led you here to become the dean, the president of Asia School of Business.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as dramatic or romantic or brave as it sounds, to be honest. There are very brave people out there, and we the people fighting in wars, defending themselves, and people who take huge risks and take on governments. So what I did was not that brave, really. But in answer to your question, because I didn't give up tenure, I'm still professor at MIT. All that said, I've really always felt two things. One is I like change, and I'm Asian, right? So it was about 10, 15, 12 years ago, I spent a lot of time in Singapore. So I felt that I wanted to be in Asia. But the second, perhaps more important thing, is I really feel that education's at a crossroads. We think of refugee crises, right? War or flooding or something, and people have to move. Climate change is going to create refugee crises. But in fact, we are in the midst of refugee crisis now, but not of the kind you imagine. AI is going to displace a lot of people and their jobs. Sustainability is going to demand a lot of new people. And we have to, the analogy I've used in the past is, tragically, when the refugee crises, sometimes they get into boats and sort of make these dangerous journeys. And AI, a new form of education is needed to transfer people from the old economy to the new economy, pushed by AI, where the old jobs will vanish. So I always felt that education could really play a part in it. In fact, had to. I felt universities had to play a part in it. I did it at MIT for 10 years. And ASB, of course, is a beloved collaboration for MIT. I felt that this was a great place to take that further.
So what exactly were the conversations, the very first conversations when this idea was brought before your table and say, hey, Sanjay, what do you think about this idea of moving here? Were there any pushbacks, any doubts that you faced? What was the conversation with your wife? Did she think you were crazy, the whole idea was crazy, or was she very much on board since day one?
No, my wife knows I'm crazy. So that conversation never
That's
started.
a given.
Yeah, that's a given. No, so when this first came up, actually, as it turned out, I had to go to Dubai for work, and a little trick. I asked my wife to join me in Bali, so she came down to Bali and we had a great time, and then we both came here. And I saw this amazing campus, met some really wonderful students. Some of them were your classmates, probably, or maybe not. But and then I met the faculty and the staff. So I thought, wow, this is pretty special. But I wasn't really thinking about taking it on. It was just a visit. But over Christmas, and over the New Year's break, I spent a lot of time. I was thinking a lot about education, reform and education, especially at the adult level, right? And the master's is a professional degree. It's not an undergraduate degree. So I thought, this may be a great platform. Great students, great alums, faculty, current staff. But let's understand the situation first, right? So I thought this may be a great platform, but also an opportunity to figure out where the future is. And Southeast Asia, I think we all know, is the future. So over the break, my wife said, "I think you want to do this."
So it worked.
So I said, "Let me think about it." And mid-January, I confirmed, and end of February, I was here. I canceled my class. I was going to teach in the spring at MIT. I canceled it and came.
Wow. So it's been almost almost a year?
1 year exactly.
Yeah, since you made that decision to come over, packed your bags, moved halfway across the world, and took on this role as the CEO, president, as well as the dean here at Asia School of Business. What have been some of the most rewarding and challenging parts of this role?
Well, I mean, mostly rewarding actually. First of all, what an amazing place this is. I mean, just the cultural. I was in a meeting today thinking I would never have a meeting like this. The cross section of people, there were like 4 different languages being spoken in a sort of a slangy way to make a point. It was amazing. Malaysia is a great place. People are very warm. It's multi-ethnic, very warm. ASB is terrific, right? As I've said, the students, alums, faculty, and of course, amazing staff. And the opportunity is clear. The opportunity is very clear that, in fact, here there is both a need and urgency on the one hand, but also capability to project the future. So those are all good. What's been challenging in a lot of these things is getting to assess the situation, situational awareness. And it's one thing to have situational awareness, even at a company you worked at for 30 years or 25 years. It's another thing to come to a new country, to a new organization, right? And to figure it out. There's local politics, nuance, all that stuff. And also there's organizational culture. You need to understand that. But there's a silver lining, which is bringing a fresh pair of eyes actually gives you some advantages. And over time, you sort of make observations and you hold back and you go, I don't want to jump to conclusions. And sometimes you realize, okay, that was the wrong observation. But some of the other ones, they actually give you an advantage if you can win people over. And that's been great.
What has been, just to double click on that, what has been some ways that you found effective for you in terms of uncovering or unraveling the layers behind the situations that you spoke about?
So as you know, my wife isn't here. I'm here by myself. She visits. My daughter visits. My friends visit. But often I'm just by myself. That's given me the possibility I can basically spend a lot of time with people, one-on-one. I'm having dinner with a colleague after this. I hung out with someone yesterday. I hung out with someone on Sunday, right? Because it's, I'm a workaholic, but even I need to eat food and hang out occasionally. And it's the one-on-ones where I have been able to get the insights. And that's a big discovery for me. Because after living, I should have known it because I'm Indian, but after living in America for 27 years, America tends to be somewhat more cut and dry. The one-on-ones help a lot, don't get me wrong, but not as much. There it's more cut and dry. Here, it's very relationship-oriented. It's trust-oriented. And that's been the big insight for me, how much that's paid off. I sort of stumbled into it because I was free, but it's been quite revelatory.
That's fascinating to hear, especially since it's not a smooth, linear path towards discovering that. You had to, try it out, you had to experiment and, sometimes even endure some stumbling blocks. And I think switching gears, we want to talk a little bit with you about growth and failures. So, as Sarah also mentioned earlier, you have had a very illustrious career, marked by a lot of accomplishments, such as developing key technologies behind the RFID standards, co-founding OIT systems that were subsequently acquired by Checkpoint Systems, and of course, receiving numerous Best Paper Awards for the research that you have done. And we know that behind every string of success, there are often the lesser talked about and less glamorous kind of failures, setbacks, and challenges that one would have to endure. So we would love for you to share a story about a significant failure or a setback that you have experienced. How do you navigate through it? And as a result, how do you manage to grow through that event?
I'm going through one right now, which is not apparent, but we did some work that in my view is game-changing. The paper's getting rejected everywhere.
Do you know why?
Well, so let me talk about that. It's not about that paper, but more about failure. I really think when you innovate or you do something new, sometimes in life, you think you can see, but you really can't. We're used to vision, right? I can see Afik, I can see this room, I can see the cameras, I can see you, I can see this table. But actually, when you innovate, there are other things in this room that you cannot see. They're like glass, they're transparent. And the only way you can discover them is to get out of the chair and walk around the room and stumble over them. You're actually blind. Now, if you saw a blind person with a cane do it, you would go, oh my God, that's so, amazing, right? Because a blind person without vision is using a cane. In innovation, we're all sort of blind. Failure is discovering the things you can't see. It takes courage to get off the chair and walk around knowing that there are things you can't see. Pieces of furniture, oddly shaped, but completely transparent. And once you discover them, you have to navigate around them. So innovation is not just about discovery. It's learning to stumble over it, learning to get better at stumbling. It's called graceful failure, right? Learning to get up, learning to remember and form patterns, and trying not to make the same mistake repeatedly. So to me, failure is the probing of the unknown. It's not failure. We should come up with a new word.
What would you call it?
I'm not sure. I would call it probing of the unknown. We are exploring territory others did not. Think of the explorers who, the Native Americans who landed in North America. Everyone talks about Lewis and Clark, but think of the Native Americans. They came from Northern Asia, crossed the Bering Strait, which was a land bridge, came into North America, and then spread all the way to South America. I mean, how brave. New animals, mammoths that hunt mammoths, the weather, the cougars, the jaguars, the anacondas in South America, the wolves, new foods. Maybe some of them were poisonous, but they tried it. This is, to me, this exploration and exploring the unknown is about controlled failure. Failure is innovation, period. Not just, I would add, learning from it, pivoting, dusting yourself off, keeping going, and not trying not to make the same failure too many times. So with this paper, we're going to learn from it. In fact, we're looking at the reviews and going, oh, interesting. Oh, maybe we should change it. It'll become a global blockbuster, I'm pretty sure. Because some of the best results we've had. But we aren't able to get through the reviewers, and, we've got to figure out how to do it, and we'll be better for it. There's some invisible furniture we're running into.
I love that perspective. So everything that we see here, there is so much beyond whatever you can just see, right? There's so much more that's invisible to the eye. But that's also a very current professional failure that you're facing right now, Sanjay. And we look forward to also hearing, what the final outcome of you navigating the setbacks from the reviewers of this particular paper. But from a more personal perspective as well, would you share with our audience a little bit more about a personal failure that you've encountered, which has really, been a turning point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I have made career moves that didn't pay off. I have made friendships that didn't work out. In fact, they hurt. Friendships is a common one, right? You go into business with someone or you work with someone, it doesn't work out. And it happens all the time. Because if you're constantly probing the unknown in every sector of your life, you're going to have some struggles. Personal life, which is outside work, it's usually outside my main job, which is MIT or ASB. It's things like startups. It's things like a friendship. It's things that you do someone a favor. And or you expect. One of the big challenges when you have expectations, right? And they don't come through. So these things, again, have hurt. But over time, what happens is you develop an instinct. And you also realize that having expectations is the wrong reason to help someone. You want to help someone because it's the right thing to do. Expectations set you up for failure, right? So these are all sort of Zen, discoveries you make as you get older. And once you become comfortable with them, actually your life gets a lot easier.
I mean, it is true that, failures or continuous probing is the way to move forward and ultimately grow. And thank you so much for sharing, not only professionally, but personally, some of these things that you have learned through your stumbles, through different, forays in life. On another note, another topic that I'm sure a lot of our audiences would be very curious to hear about is how you approach continuous learning and improvement in your own life. And I've heard you share, that you have this habit or practice that you do every weekend. You look at all the meetings of your week and you reflect upon it, whether it was good, whether it was worth your time or not. So we're curious to find out what actually inspired this habit and how has that actually made a difference in your life?
So I was inspired by the fact that I had too many meetings.
I'm trying to get out of some.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, it was just insane. Because I've been, I have a pretty complex life and I had to become efficient. And then I was like, my God, I mean, this has been a crazy week. I mean, it's 6 p.m. on a Friday. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep, Can't continue this way. So it started that way. It was also around the time I became much more professional about keeping track of meetings and I have notes and things like that. I tried to. I'm not great at it, but I'm pretty good. So then when I started reflecting, I realized that I wasn't just wasting my time, I was wasting the other person's time too on the one hand. Then some meetings I'd look at them and go, I didn't approach that meeting right. I met this very interesting person and I could have gotten so much more out of it. I could have asked them these questions. Or that was a boring meeting. But if I'd approached it differently, that could have been a very valuable meeting for the other person too. Or I didn't have a meeting I should have had where I could have actually helped myself or helped someone else. So this became a bit of an obsession. Not an obsession. I mean, basically on a Friday evening, I'll just look at my iPhone, right? So it's strange, when you do that, then the next time when you're setting up a meeting, this comes up and you go, interesting. Can that be a 30-minute meeting? Can that meeting just be handled by email, right? Maybe this particular meeting, I should request the other person to send me an agenda, right? Or maybe in this meeting, I should do more research on the person. Someone's going to come to meet me and they look interesting. I should do more research so I can get more out of it and be more respectful. So these are all little instincts that come up. And then other things happen. For example, as you become more senior, you want to delegate. Maybe I should invite this person and this person to the meeting, right? To make it more valuable and so there's follow-up. How do I make sure execution is a big skill, right? How do I make sure you execute on the follow-ups? So these are all things that it's not just with meetings, with anything. If you reflect on it, reflection I think is a really great thing. How did that go? Could it have been better? And then you go, yeah, it could have been a lot better. Vacation. Maybe I should have rented a car instead of doing Grab or something, Yeah.
Well, it makes me also think about the different kind of productivity tools that we ourselves have, right? So as, students ourselves of the Asia School of Business a couple of years ago, I think of the way that I look at my own calendar. And while there are more things that I have to be involved in, and it's more difficult for me to get out of these of some of the meetings compared to yourself, Sanjay. I think that act of having a habit of constantly looking at ways that you can optimize your calendar, because it makes space for efficiency and it makes space for execution in a more efficient manner with the right stakeholders involved. I think that's a really important skill to have. Just a good reminder for us to also make sure that we have our calendars on check all the time. That's something that I personally struggle with.
But it's beyond calendar. Think of a vacation. Think of something really sort of mundane.
Yeah.
Dinner. You had dinner with some friends, right? And you don't get too sort of boringly, nerdily analytical about it. But, I spent a lot of time, we should have sat outdoors. It was nicer, right? Or something like that, right? Or maybe we could have gone for a walk before or something, It's just a thing about reflection,
Across different facets. Do you find that you find ways to try to optimize areas of your life?
I do. Only because I'm crushed. So, yeah. And some I don't. Some I try not to optimize, like family stuff, although I did tell my wife, don't watch Dune 2, wait for me to return.
That's a fair ask.
Yeah.
I heard it's a really good one.
Yeah.
I just found out a friend watched it for the third time already and it just came out. So apparently it's really good.
Yeah. So I was worried because
that.
she said, I'm going to a movie. I said, not to Dune 2, wait for me. Then I texted my daughter and said, Sunday, Dune 2. She goes, yes.
Family date.
Yeah, family date.
Exactly.
But so that's optimizing. But it's not so much optimizing. It's just more
Prioritizing, I feel.
Also, how can you get more out of it? How can you enjoy it more?
Yeah.
right? Everything, right? But you've got to be careful not to be over analytic, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's also about
It's a good
prioritizing
balance.
the right buckets. So for in your case, it's definitely on family. And so Sanjay, we also know that curiosity, it's a core value of yours. It's something that you speak very, very passionately about, and it's also something that we ourselves are definitely resonate with, right?
That's why you do podcasts, right?
Perfect example and an analogy. It's like it's not as if we don't have enough of things on our hands or on our calendars, but we also decided to build up, explore this since the pandemic started, and So I think is someone who's your classmate, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who, popularized the quote on Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success regarding growth mindset. And one of the things he has said is how the learn-it-all will definitely do better than the know-it-all. And obviously we resonate with that because we also aspire to be the learn-it-alls as compared to the know-it-alls. So how do you encourage individuals who might not have so much of this curiosity muscle to develop that even further? Because it comes very naturally to someone like yourselves or even us maybe, but not to others.
Yeah, so in Satya, for example, he, in conversations, he asks most of the questions. Just listen. It's first of all, you got to learn to listen and absorb and digest and incorporate. The interesting thing is, the people you find interesting are the people who find you interesting. It's sort of an observation I made. And it comes back to my top question about history. Tell me more about yourself. What does your mom do? What does your dad do? What do your siblings do? Right? The person who gets off the seat and walks around the room, using my early analogy, and stumbles into the invisible is more likely to be able to negotiate this room or life. So this desire to just probe the unknown has to be, you can't just turn it on and turn it off. It's got to be all the time. Or if you can keep it on all the time, you're going to be more successful. And the crazy thing is, I think we all are born with that. That's why we find children so cute. That's why we find babies cute. That's why we find puppies cute, because they're exploring, right? When a puppy does something and she rolls over or falls over, it's cute because she took a risk. Same thing with babies, right? So this spirit of exploration is very deep. You just have to sort of either not kill it or rekindle it. That's one of the things education has to fix. Education is all about killing it, in fact, but we have to rekindle it. And so I think it's pretty essential. By the way, when you're curious, the brain generates a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine promotes learning, right? Think of an animal that doesn't explore. It's never going to find its food. No animal that doesn't explore, whether it's a snake or a cheetah, is going to have to look for food.
So it's also a survival instinct.
Yes, it's a survival instinct. And it's no different a survival instinct for a cheetah than for us when we're trying to, negotiate a very, very volatile, uncertain, complex, world. So
I'm curious, actually. I mean, as an educator yourself, in this age of excessive information that we live in, do you find, the learners these days, are they more curious or less curious as a result of the information overload?
It's hard to judge. First of all, COVID's made a difference to populations as disjointedness. Also, what does curiosity mean? I mean, for example, you could be, if I told you about, I don't know, how to make a plastic, you might be curious about it, or you might be curious about why do we use plastics, right? So at a different level, right? So it's hard to judge. I think curiosity is very essential. I think, if anything, a lot of young people are more in charge of their curiosity and not accepting someone else telling them, you should be curious about this. No, I'm curious about this, damn it, right? So I don't think there's a change. If anything, I think a change for the better. It's just we can't tell them what to be curious about, right? They want to be curious about what they want to be curious about. Damn it. Right? So I think that we have to give that agency back to young people and to old people, Curiosity also is better for mental acuity in an old age. We have problems with dementia, Alzheimer's. As we live longer, the lifespan is exceeding the brain span. Right? The health span is exceeding the life of the brain. And it turns out that if your brain is active, you put that off a little bit. So for all these reasons, I think curiosity is like the new yoga,
Mental yoga.
It's you gotta have it. You gotta do it. Get on board.
Yep.
So, one of the things that, I'm sure you've spoken to death about actually, Sanjay, is on the skill sets that is required of the world that we're in today, VUCA, very volatile and uncertain. And, as we're speaking to you as the Dean, President, CEO of ASB, I'm sure you speak voluminously on topic of the value of the MBA. And with that, as we move towards this gig economy and how the landscape of work has been changing so drastically since even, pre-COVID days, COVID days, and where we are today. And, we've also heard you share, and you spoke about this very briefly, about how AI will create job refugees. So could you elaborate a little bit more about what you mean by this?
Look, things are changing really fast. And you could be doing one thing today and you'll be doing another thing tomorrow, right? We're in a podcast, Afika set us up, but the editing is being automated, right? This is hard to automate, right? Setting this up, getting everyone to line up, checking, that's hard to automate. But some jobs are easier to automate. Editing, video editing is going to get automated. If you do accounting, well, accounting is going AI. If you do, let's say, finance, well, a lot of the macros, AI-powered macros will do your finance, Generative P&L, boom, right? If you do coding, a lot of the coding is going to get automated.
Copilot's taking care of all of that.
Yeah. The other day I did
You talked about Sora as well, right? Text to video. My goodness.
Yeah. So that means that it's not that the jobs vanish. A job is a bundle of tasks. Coming back to my productivity argument, right? That's why you need to be ahead of your productivity game, because it keeps you on the things that are value add. That's my other reason for doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So your job is a bundle of tasks. A lot of the tasks are not very value added. So those will get automated. And then your job gets eroded. So either you use this to make yourself much more productive, or you learn new skills that haven't been automated. But if you're just sitting around, your job is going to get merged with someone else's job. So you have to look at it that way. It's pretty existential, And the problem is that that's not the social contract we have with people who work. You're supposed to, join a company, work there for the rest of your life, collect your pension. Well, forget that. You have new world. And that conversation has to be had.
Yeah. Trajectories are no longer linear, right? Jobs are evolving, jobs are being removed as we speak, jobs are being added. So on that note, what are some of these skill sets or essential mindsets that you think would be essential not only for, these MBA grads, but also working professionals in general to thrive in this post-GPT world?
So the growth mindset, Carol Dweck, it actually is a subtle point. The point is that the mind should not be treated as a limited resource, but as a muscle that can be grown. Just as, if you exercise, you build muscle. We have to tell everyone the new social contract is A, you can grow. B, you better grow. You better go to the gym, intellectual gym and the physical gym. They go hand in hand, by the way, several times a week. Learning, education is continuous. We have a tiger on our tail, right? We have to outrun it. And that's a new contract. And I actually think learning will become a benefit, like healthcare.
So,
interesting.
Kind of to throw a spanner in the works, can growth mindset be taught?
The way I'll put it to you is, growth mindset is who we are. We've been taught that it's not the case. Human beings actually, brain plasticity is significant, and there's a lot of potential. In fact, the education system sort of takes it away, takes the agency away, and we just have to give it back. So I don't know if I'm not saying it should be taught. I'm just saying we just need to remind people that they can grow. It was always there.
I think it's also about what kind of environment do you thrive in, such that you can feed the brain and you have that desire to actually want to grow and learn more. Because I would say it doesn't come so naturally to some people, or rather, like you said, they have been taught that, being comfortable is the way to grow about.
You're a very poor person living in, pick a city, right? Lagos, Nigeria, New Delhi, India, Manila, pick a city. You're very creative. You're
resourceful.
Surviving. Resourceful. You're surviving. One day you're setting umbrellas because there's a storm. The next day, you're delivering food. The next day, you realize there's a business or there's an opportunity. Maybe it's a little bit in the gray area, but you're resourceful, right? Comfort puts us in a comfort zone. Innovation is in a discomfort zone. A lot of people who innovate are out there, as I said, stumbling over the invisible furniture because either they're compulsively in that region or they're forced to. A lot of us, we go into the comfort zone and then we just want to sort of settle down, right? Well, that zone is shrinking. So, welcome to the rest of humanity.
Hopefully, it's for the better, I would say.
I got chills when you said that.
So, one of the primary criticisms of an MBA actually is the high cost compared to the potential financial benefits. And also, in a place where the argument is that the ROI may not actually justify the investment and the high opportunity cost, especially when it comes to mid-level professionals leaving the workplace, sometimes for a long period of time, 20 months, for example, the initial iteration of this MBA program here at ASB. And another common argument that we hear of quite frequently is that the traditional MBA programs may no longer be up to date and cannot really keep up to the speed and of the rapidly evolving industries that we are currently in, and it might be a little bit too theoretical and too detached, right? So what are your thoughts on some of these arguments that has been put forth, especially on the value of the MBA losing its relevance?
Well, I think the length of the MBA depends on your cohort and the faculty and the environment you're in. I mean, if you go to Harvard or MIT or Stanford, these massive, amazing zoos that you're hanging out in, and it's great, right? At ASB, it worked really well for many years because you had fantastic cohorts of students. Of course, we have fantastic faculty, and you're in Kuala Lumpur, just petri dish. COVID changed everything, right? COVID, suddenly everyone digital, things started changing. The AI revolution comes on the back of COVID because COVID forced everyone to go digital, and AI sits on top of digital. You see, if we hadn't gone digital because of COVID as much, AI might have been pushed out a little bit, strangely, right? Everyone went to Zoom, and now you have an AI bot on Zoom, right? So that's the point. So they sort of went, it was a coincidence, but they're accelerating off of each other. Now, the thing is that once we get into this new realm of very rapid change, the opportunity cost of a 2-year MBA is maybe too high. If you can do it, it's still great. The opportunity cost is high, right? And now we've gone to a 1-year MBA. And particularly, we have an executive MBA, so you don't leave your job. For those who can't, for those who can, it's fantastic, right? Because I think the value is great. But from a financial perspective, you've got to invest in your long-term success. And not everyone has that luxury.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. So I do think the MBA has to adapt to folks who, even the executive MBA, it's a sprint. It's 18-month sprint. And if your company is going through an M&A and you want to drop off and work in the M&A and come back, you're dropped out of the program.
Can't afford that, right?
So that's the next thing we're going to break. So what we're doing is working on something called Agile Continuous Education, ACE. And the idea is that the courses are individual. And you take them. If you can take them fast, it's great. But if you want to just drop off for various reasons, no problem, hop back in. And we could even decouple it from the actual MBA. And the MBA, which is while you're here, just double down on making it transformative, right? Growth mindset, which is, as you know, it's very important. So really working on that. It's working on things like integrating across fields, thinking on your feet, right? Learning the disciplines, going and doing some action learning, doing an internship, reflecting, working with professors. So the idea is that can you have a combination of flexibility? And if you just want the micro-credential from doing stuff in a hybrid format, that's great. And if you want to complement that with an in-person experience, we'll make that in-person experience magical. And that's what ACE is. And that's an answer to your question, which is it worth it? Well, let's make it worth it.
That's super exciting. And I think, it does speak to a lot of people's pain points, right? Where, as Sarah mentioned, the working sort of mid-career professional who's got things they need to chase and things they need to accomplish and sometimes juggle a family. So for them to take 2 years out of the workplace or even 1 year itself might be too high of a cost. So what you've described as this sort of agile continuous education, have the option to do some things online, come back to the classroom, that's all super appealing. But I'm also thinking about those audiences who might be listening now and think about, okay, during the Zoom era, we've had so much online learning, right? And they might not necessarily resonate to learning asynchronously very effectively, what would you say to some of these audiences who might be thinking, I like the idea of efficiency, being able to get just-in-time education, but I might struggle a bit with this sort of virtual learning delivery?
And just before you answer that, Sanjay, I think to add on to that, part of the initial value proposition of being in class and having that cohort that you stick around with for the period of the length of the MBA, you build that sort of relationship with the classmates, and there is that camaraderie that you thrive in, right? As a cohort, you grow and you learn and you pivot your careers and you figure out the unknowns together. So how do you navigate both of this?
Yeah.
Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So let's talk first about the Zoom fatigue. Zoom was the worst of both worlds, right? It was neither in person, nor was it actually truly online. It was in person, done with 50 people staring at you with bleary eyes on a panel.
True story.
It's terrible. And you know why there are many reasons you get tired, because you're trying to pick up everyone's emotions. Some people are sort of turn the cameras off. And the professor is just delivering the same old lecture on Zoom. At least if you're in the classroom, you can turn to your right or turn to your left and talk to a colleague. I missed that, or make a joke. Professors, can read your emotions. If we didn't have that. On the other hand, have you watched a YouTube video recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad, right?
Of course.
It's pretty good.
It's fun. Yeah, pause, speed up, slow down.
That's an asynchronous video. Yeah, exactly. 8x2, right? That's asynchronous video. So we're not talking about Zoom lectures. I mean, I first of all don't think we should have lectures at all, right? What we're talking about is asynchronous video and a flipped classroom. So if you want to do it by Zoom, that's fine, because you can't. Your child is at home, but it is not a single person talking to 50 people. What you're doing is you're playing, for example, a game, a simulation. You're asking questions. You're doing an exercise in breakout groups. Or if you're in person, you have all the value of being in person. So this is not a one-to-many Zoom broadcast. We will not do that. That is the thing we're trying to erase from history. By the way, even at ASB, I think we should go to asynchronous video where students watch stuff before they come in. The classroom is a studio, not a professor just presenting things for the first time. If you have that on video, just watch it on video. And the classroom should be where you ask difficult questions, explore, case studies, etc., etc. And that's what we're going to do. That's called the flipped classroom.
That's super exciting.
And in answer to your question about the cohort building, so we've done a lot of experiments. When I'm, at MIT, the team is still doing it actually, where we do 1-week boot camps. Did you know that you can build camaraderie in an intentionally designed 1-week boot camps?
I guess if it's like pressure cooker kind of simulation.
We've had couples
fall in love from that.
And that.
Oh.
We've had
additional ROI.
Startups raise $70 million total that came out of these boot camps. So we're talking about 6 months. You can, if you really focus on it, you can build camaraderie. You can build. Right now, with most these programs, it's like catch as catch can. Maybe it'll happen, maybe not. But it doesn't have to be a 6-month pressure cooker. But if you really create activities, really curate it, really give opportunities for people to grow, right? Really have external activities. I think you can actually have better camaraderie than in a 1-year program. But you have to plan it, and that's what we're working on. We want to make when we go to ACE, if students spend less time here, it'll count. It'll be better.
So I'm curious to know then, Sanjay, what would success actually look like to you if you successfully introduce ACE into the ASB environment?
Success, many metrics of success. Real success is if companies can use this to create the boat to go from where they are to where they need to go. Real success is when students in ACE get real value from it. Real success is when it's financially better for them, because they're not doing 4 courses and hoping it pays off. They're doing one, it pays off. They do another, it pays off. Real success is when students who come here do swimmingly well. Real success is when this makes our alums happier because they have access to this. We're going to make it very affordable
That's
for alums.
great news for us.
Yeah. So actually, I want this to be lifelong education for alums. In fact, that's how it started. Lifelong education for alums. So you can always come back to ASB and consume this, right? And real success is the students who come here for the regular MBA, right, get all these benefits and their experience is better. So it's many metrics. I just feel that very, very, very constrained. We have a one-size-fits-all model, which is also in MBAs in general. But I think giving ourselves flexibility gives everyone the opportunity to really flourish in a way that is compatible with their lives and their desires.
So hypothetically and theoretically, in paper or whatever I'm hearing so far, Sanjay, I would say it sounds great. It sounds great that you get to merge technology, asynchronous learning, flexibility and agility, and also allowing students the capacity to learn at their own pace, but also making sure that they do not lose the opportunity to interact with their classmates through the flipped classroom method. But what do you think are some challenges to anticipate in introducing this model?
I think the most important one is when you make any system change, even if it's better,
There'll be resistance.
there's resistance and also momentum. So, for example, over the course of 20 years, MIT flipped its classrooms. In fact, MIT is famous because, if you've been to the campus, if you go to the main campus, the ceilings are very high. And was that for aesthetics? It looks pretty. No, it was because the workshops were the classroom. So the idea of a chemistry lab, if you learn chemistry, it's an MIT concept. The fact that you would do a lab and not just do it on paper, is an MIT concept. So this idea of a flipped classroom is very MIT, but over the years, it got eroded, and about 10, 20 years ago, MIT started going back to that concept. There was actually a classroom very famous called Technology Enhanced Active Learning, TEAL classrooms. And the students were like, wait, we studied the old way. Why are you changing things? Even the students. So the most important thing is getting people to buy into it so they don't feel that they understand that this is being done for the right reasons. Change management is the biggest challenge. Our faculty are great. They're on board. Our students, we have a small student body and very agile, so we'll be fine. But this really needs to be a national, international movement. And there are many efforts afoot, not just mine. I mean, I created this with my colleagues at MIT. It's being deployed with refugees by MIT, right? And similar efforts are afoot elsewhere. So, but it has to really take off, and system change is difficult.
Sure, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've also seen that you've successfully deployed this in 2015, and that was quite a while back. And to replicate that model in Asia, in an Asian setting, would certainly, I think over time the results will tell for itself. But for now, I think we are excited to see what will come out of this very, very new model. And on that note, we want to dive a bit more about ASB, right? The school, so uniquely positioned here in Southeast Asia, in the heart of Asia. What would you say is something that sets ASB apart? And of course, as alumni, we are beneficiaries of the school, and it has transformed us both personally and professionally. But for those who are listening, who are wondering, I might want to do an MBA, but I'm not sure whether I want to go the conventional route, go to the US, do the MBA there, or perhaps explore an MBA here in Asia. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, with the two of you, you met here, right? You have careers. You have the curiosity and the agency to do this. You're back on campus. You're doing this on campus, right? I mean, and to me, Southeast Asia is an extraordinary region. I mean, I've talked about climate change. I've talked about AI. There's another thing going on, which is populations are shrinking worldwide. If it weren't for immigration, America's population would be shrinking. European populations outside of France are shrinking. The fertility rate of childbirth needs to be 2.1, 2.2 to keep population stable. In Europe, it's like in Italy, it's 1 point something, 1.1 or something. In Hong Kong, it's 0.7. China is 1 point something. South Korea is 0.76. Southeast Asia is growing. It's an amazing place. It's diverse. It's as one of my colleagues put it, it's plural. There's different ethnicities, cultures, languages, geographic terrains. From all the way from montane, that is glacial climates, to of course all the the tropical and the mangrove and the beach climates, and of course the ocean, right? The pelagic areas. So, and energy is low cost here, but climate change is going to impact more. You want to be here, I think. You want to be in the petri dish. Also, another thing, America is very organized. Europe is very organized. In fact, a lot of the innovation is in unorganized sectors. Think about it. Uber, Grab, right? Because there are many more hawkers here. So a lot of the gig economy is much easier here. So I think a lot of the innovation as a result will move here. What Asia needs to do is find its mojo. And ASB is trying to do that. And people like you, the two of you, right, are glistening examples of what ASB wants to do. And it can only happen here.
Very well pitched, I would say, Sanjay. And especially as alums of ASB ourselves, I can speak for Janice and I. So our friendship has started since 2013, back in law school, actually, in the UK. And it has really transversed and brought us back to Malaysia as we pivoted our careers through the MBA. And like you said, it has really, the MBA has given us that platform, that foundation as well to really, I would say, what's the word you would use? Skyrocket? Accelerate.
And accelerate our growth mindset. I would say that was a big part of it as well, through things like action learning and, the different teamwork, self-leadership, group leadership. I mean, I could go on, but that's a separate episode.
Well, no, I mean, think about it. I think that it used to be people work for companies. 300 years ago, we all worked for ourselves. Then over especially in the last 100 years, we all work for someone else. The pendulum swinging back. We're going to work for ourselves. Strangely, that's what entrepreneurship is. That's what the gig economy is. You're the CEO of your company. You're the CEO of yourself. You're the chief marketing officer of yourself, right? You're the chief learning officer of yourself. So this mentality, I think, is essential. We just have to adapt to the Asian milieu to make it work. To those who have the privilege, it's fantastic. For those who don't, let's offer something else. So I think that ASB is in a very interesting place, and our faculty and our students and our alums and our staff, exceptional, really exceptional. This is not... I was just blown away, actually. So we have a unique opportunity and a limited window to do it.
So actually, on that note, and just wrapping up the conversation, Sanjay, as we think of other business schools, especially in this region or even beyond in the US, there are certain student personas, or I would say common pathways that are associated and to certain business schools. So for example, with MIT Consulting and Tech, with Wharton Finance and INSEAD Consulting, just to name a few. So what type of students or young professionals or mid-level professionals do you think would benefit the most from pursuing an MBA here at the Asia School of Business?
I think ASB is going to be really focused on building executive capacity in Asia. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a family-owned business in Malaysia that's been in the family for 2 generations. You're a 3rd generation. And you're trying to figure out, how do I scale this? It's in Malaysia. It's in KL. Can I scale this to JB? Can I scale this to Penang? Can I go to Indonesia? Right? What's the competition in Singapore? Will they compete with me? That is one persona, right? I think that is the pivot happening here, because Malaysia is a middle-income country. It's going from a low-income country to, it's on the verge of becoming a high-income country. And that needs systems thinking. It needs a little bit of sort of that romance of maybe I can grow it, the practicality. How do I manage scale? How do I manage operations, right? Do I the little bit of the tech? Do I accept payments in Bitcoin? What currency play should I have? So this is a very unique sector in this part of the world that is our target. It is people pivoting because of the opportunities here. Of course, we have really great alums. One of our alums just started at McKinsey yesterday. It's a consulting company. We have an alum doing a startup in mining, right? But the mining startup is unlikely to happen in other places. So we have a spectrum, but it's that executive layer that I think can really drive this region. That's our target.
And that's a sweet spot. On that note, we do have a final question from an Explore This listener who actually submitted a question specifically for you. So I'm just going to play that right now.
Hi Sanjay, this is Dr. Ong Kian Ming here, academic at Taylor's University and former Member of Parliament in Malaysia. My question is as follows. If there was one thing that you wanted public policy makers around the world to understand about the impact of generative artificial intelligence on public policy making and design, what would it be? How would you explain it to them in ways that are easily understood by the policymakers? Thank you very much. Hope to see you on campus at ASB or in Taylor's. See you. Bye-bye.
Fun fact, we're both alums of Taylor's and
Yeah.
ASB.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, no, Ong Keng Min is amazing. I would say it's what I said. We are in for either an upskilling, depending on the job you're in, or a reskilling revolution. If you're a builder, if you do sewing, you're okay. If you do accounting, you're in a upskilling revolution. And your job is going to become much easier. If you work for yourself, you got to figure out how to make more money from it. If you work for a company, you got to make sure you know how you won't be made redundant. On the other hand, if you are at the cashier of a restaurant, if you're the cashier, that's going to go large language models. You need to reskill to do something else. The scale of this is pretty spectacular. And this is what I don't think public policy folks are recognizing. They don't know about it. They probably don't want to know about it. And the thing about it is, by the time you see the effects, it's too late to react. Right? If you see jobs vanishing, it's too late. Because when it starts, it's going to be an avalanche. So it is an existential moment. You see, language is so fundamental to human beings, right? And that's just been taken away. The other thing I'll say is that it's going to affect women more than men initially. And the reason is women tend to work the more digital jobs, customer service, etc. Men tend to work the more sort of physical jobs, just a ratio. The robotics revolution hasn't happened yet. It's coming soon. The AI revolution will affect women first. That's what I'd like them to know.
So how do public policy enthusiasts like Ong Kian Ming, what do you have to say to help them to make sure that they're ahead of this curve?
Learning is the new oxygen of the economy. And I'm not saying that because I'm a university president. In fact, I would put it in reverse. I'm a university president because I believe learning is the new oxygen of the economy. And it's that boat. It's a refugee boat. And we have to make those boats now.
Time is of the essence.
Yeah. And, right now it's almost financially better to go into the gig economy. But that's a blind end. It's a dead alley, right? It's a dead end. So blind alley, dead end. And so we need to really figure out societally where the labor market is going. Otherwise, we'll be, as the expression goes, up a creek without a paddle. And we're heading there.
Well, this is a wonderful way for us to wrap up this conversation. And we'd like to end this episode with a final question that we ask all our guests, Sanjay, which is, what is one thing that you recently explored that surprised you?
Penang.
Tell us more.
I went to Penang. I hung out in Penang. I saw all the sights and I just fell in love with that place. The history, the culture, the streets, the
food,
the buildings, and of course the food. Of course the food. I just loved it. And one of the things is I just get on a plane and go somewhere, for a weekend. And I went to Penang earlier, but this time I really got it.
You really soaked in it.
I really soaked it in.
And a double bonus question for you, especially for you, Sanjay. What is one thing that you hope to explore more of for the rest of 2024?
I'm trying to understand the history of Malaysia. It's quite extraordinary history. Everything from the Malay people. I mean, that's the greatest migration in human history. Most migrations were land-based. the Malays invented outrigger canoes, etc., and went to the sea, and they went all the way from Hawaii to Easter Island to Madagascar, and of course all of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines. And then the Chinese came here, and then the Indians came here, and then the colonial powers. It's what an amazing layer cake of history.
Lots to chew on.
Lots to chew on, and my goodness, you have taken us in this conversation from Boston to KL to Penang to Madagascar, and we just want to thank you so much for your time, Sanjay. That was so wide-ranging, that was so rich as well, and a lot of poignant thoughts for everyone to chew on after this. So once again, thank you so much for your time on this podcast, and for all the listeners, we hope you enjoyed this conversation.
Pleasure. Great to be interviewed, particularly by two amazing alumni.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you stuck around to the end of this episode, we want to say thank you for exploring with us. And if you don't already, please follow us on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review, and most importantly, share this episode with your friends.
We would love to hear from you. So you can also connect with us on Instagram using the Instagram handle Explore This Podcast. ACTSPLORE This Podcast. New episodes for Explore This drops every alternate Mondays at 8 p.m. See you then!